So we are back after a long break because we were both traveling. So we are going to talk about, I think we're going to talk about IoT today. Right, Michael?
Yeah. So, we've both been out to different conferences. Back in March, I was at the Southern California Linux Expo Scale out in Pasadena. And I was really looking forward to talking about IoT on this show. And I was going to record some stuff there at Scale. I was going to talk to people who had IoT devices or maker devices or anything like that, anything part of the maker movement at Scale. I was going to record an interview, and we're going to have this great content for the show. But then I got there, and when I had a chance to wander around the expo hall, there was none of that there, which was kind of shocking because in previous years, there were several tables set up, people 3D printing, people with little robotics or Raspberry Pi projects, all kinds of stuff. But this year, there was nothing like that. There was one booth that had like the little Sphero robots, but that was it. There wasn't devices, there wasn't maker stuff, there wasn't a lot of consumer-focused IoT anything, really. So that got me wondering, is this a global trend? Is there a slowdown in the maker movement or people getting out of a consumer focus or just like a little hacking project kind of focus and more of an industrial commercial thing? And I know Microsoft had their big announcement, and you talked to Microsoft about this, their new IoT operating system. And that's a big news, but that again, it sounds like something that's maybe going to be commercial, industrial focused and not consumer and end user devices focused. Tell us about what is this Microsoft project that they announced?
Yeah, so I talked to Galen Hunt. He's a partner managing director of Microsoft Azure Sphere product line. It's actually the whole, there's something interesting. When you talked about kind of absence of IoT devices in these open source centric events, and you're right that something strange is going on, because I was at Open IoT Summit in March, and where I met a lot of people, but almost everybody was talking about industrial IoT, not that much about consumer IoT there. There can be many reasons. One reason is that people are still struggling to monetize from consumer IoT. Number two is that consumer IoT has become kind of, you can say, stable or stagnated market, because if you look at consumer IoT, all the devices that could have been connected are already connected. Smart fridges are there, ring bells are there, and then thermostats are there. Apple came out with the smart speakers. Google, Amazon, they already have their Echoes and Home. Tesla has their own car. So there is not much left in the consumer space that can be connected. It depends on what kind of lifestyle you have. From TV to car, everything is connected.
Those are all kind of like walled gardens, though, aren't they? Like I have an Alexa, I've got the Hue smart bulbs.
Yes. Right.
But it doesn't seem that there's really a lot of stuff happening around that to extend it, other than the skills in the skill store. There's no, there's not like this open source movement around it. You know what I mean?
Right. In consumer space, of course, there is not, because the thing is, it's basically when you talk about smart devices, it doesn't really matter what kind of chip you are using on the device. It doesn't really matter what kind of operating system you're using on the device. What really matters is, do you have the data set? Even if they're offering machine learning models for you so that you can slap the machine learning models on your device, if you don't have the data set from which it learns, it's useless, kind of. So Microsoft, Amazon and Google kind of dominate, not Microsoft, Google and Amazon really dominate it, and through API they are giving access to other devices, but it's a strange word. But a lot of exciting things are happening in industrial IoT for sure. And Microsoft event is actually important from many perspectives. Number one is that when you look at IoT device, the biggest problem that we see with IoT devices is security. In 2016, the Mirai botnet happened, and even today, when last year we were planning to buy a smart fridge, and I talked to LG and both Samsung, and I asked them that do they have any policy for software updates, because fridge, according to Consumer Report, a fridge should last at least 12 years. and they have warranty for some years, but they did not have anything around software updates for how long it will get software updates. Most of the people may think, hey, you know what, if your fridge gets compromised, it may not open it, so you will not be able to eat food, or your door will get locked and you will not enter the house. But that is not the problem. The big problem is that if your device is hacked, since it's connected to your local network, it has access to everything in there, so your fridge can actually steal your credit card information.
Yeah. But not only that, like you mentioned the smart door locks.
Yes.
The real concern there isn't that they'll lock and not let you in. The real concern is that there'll be a vulnerability that will let anybody in, and they're not going to patch it.
Right. I mean, that is okay too, but what I'm saying is that a lot of people, they say, you know what, okay, we have a ring bell which just tells me who is outside, so if it's compromised, I don't care. But the big problem is that if it gets compromised, your credit card information, your social security, all the critical information that you ever used on your local network and somehow it was not on secure network is stolen. Number one. Number two is that it can be used as a botnet. And then what happens is, let's say general elections are coming. All the devices are compromised, but they are just sitting like sleeping cell. And just before election day, they can just all wake up, and cause havoc. Your electricity system can. So you never know what kind of impact it may have. So what Microsoft is doing is something interesting from, as I said, a couple of perspectives. Number one was security. So. And the second thing is that they are also saying that there are a lot of existing devices which are not connected to internet. But according to market estimates, and we all know that by 2019 there will be like 9 billion more devices, that will go online. And these are like, for example, these days people use a lot of devices which are kind of smart, but they are not connected to the internet.
So what kind of devices is Microsoft going after with Sphere? Right.
So it's everything, like anything that has a microcontroller in it, and almost every device, it has any computing power. It has Arduino like microcontroller in it, no matter what it is, that's how whether it's your printer or whatever. But the problem with that is, first of all, those devices are not capable of going online. And second is, they are not designed to be secured by So what Microsoft is doing is they have worked on their own microcontroller, which kind of has a 3-layer of security. One is at hardware layer that they already do with Xbox, where if the code is not signed, it will not run. Number one, at the hardware level. Number two is the operating system, which will not be actually an operating system, but it will use a custom version of Linux. And then on top of that, they will offer Azure services for security. So when I asked him, that one of the biggest problems with the IoT vendors is that they don't have any incentive to keep the devices updated, because once they sell a doorbell, they sell the doorbell. They don't have any reason to invest money in updating it. Second is, most of these companies are Chinese vendors. They kind of, their business model is just, get one version of hardware out, sell it, move to next version.
Yeah.
The third is there is no software mechanism to even update if they want to. So even all of them are using Linux, there is no mechanism. That's why Canonical came out with Ubuntu Core, which is kind of heavyweight. It cannot run on microcontrollers. It can run on Nest-like devices. Yeah, you were asking something.
Yeah, I was asking what is Microsoft's solution to this security problem? Are they going to push updates to these devices independent of the vendor?
Yes, exactly. So number one is at hardware level, so code signing is there. So if the code is not signed, it will not run. Number one. Number two, of course, Linux is there. So it's first of all, it will lower the barrier of entry, because Linux supports a lot of microcontroller already, and they are using the Meditech controller to start with. And they're using a custom Linux kernel. So there is no distribution like Debian or Ubuntu or Fedora on it. It's just like Linux kernel. And then on top of that, what they're doing is they're using Azure security services. So it will be connected to a Microsoft Azure cloud. So the cloud will push all the changes and all the updates. So the vendor is totally out. And that is where things are interesting, that they will be releasing their whole reference design and license for free. Anybody can use that, for free. So microchip vendors can, use it. It's royalty free, and they can build chips using that design, which will be secure design. What Microsoft doing on top of that is they are charging one-time royalty fee for that, license fee, and it's very nominal fee per device. So it's like you pay 30 cents per sensor, okay? So if you're building a fridge and you're using a microcontroller and you pay 30 cents or $1 per refrigerator and you're done, finished. What happens is, after that, Microsoft will be responsible for 10 years to push updates to the device. So vendor can go out of market, vendor can die, vendor can not care about them. And that was the problem. One was incentive for the vendors to invest in it. Number two was mechanism for which they used to update it. And number three was it's the same thing, that there was no reason for them because their business model doesn't support it. So they don't want to.
So they're not going to go through any kind of like vendor approval process for updates. The vendor's not going to get a chance to test a new update to Sphere before it gets pushed out to their devices. I mean, that seems kind of like, Microsoft's going to take on all the responsibility for when these things break.
Yes, that is, Microsoft is going to be the one throat to choke when things break. But the thing is, the thing is that it's Azure, so your services, your software is running on Azure just like any other thing. They're offering. So
this is like an extension of their cloud services onto the device?
Exactly. So they will be monetizing, for Azure. So I think nowadays, Windows is no more Microsoft's main business. It's Azure everywhere. And that, if you look at their revenues, Azure is which is growing. And luckily, Azure runs a lot of Linux there.
Okay. So
yeah.
So you keep saying that it's made to run on microprocessors. So we're not talking like ARM chips or x86 chips, right?
No. That they will still be running this Windows code that they have for it.
Okay.
Right now they are totally focusing on microcontrollers because they see that, okay, we all know that, as I said in the beginning, that IoT market is already being saturated. There's no scope for new. So Microsoft knows that too. So even if they do that, who is going to sell it? Just tell me. I mean, people are already buying. Ring doorbell is there, or Samsung Smart TV is there, or let's say Google Home or Amazon Alexa or Apple HomePod is there. There is no scope, there is no market for it. So Microsoft is looking at the market which doesn't exist yet, and nobody is targeting that market. So that is what they're looking for.
Okay, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Do they have some kind of a development board or something for people who want to start playing around with it?
Yes. So since it's like they just announced it, so people can go to Azure. I don't actually, I have to open it. The site where, so you can just Google for Azure, Azure Sphere, and they have like for SDKs out there, and even testing code will be coming out soon, so people can go and start playing.
All right. So if anybody has one of these or has done anything with Azure Sphere, please let us know. Tell us the kind of things that you're doing with it, because I'm really interested.
Yeah, I don't think it's like it's just announced. So I will be interested too to see what kind of devices they'll be coming out with. And yeah, if somebody has, I mean, I don't think anybody has played it yet, because you actually, first of all, you need the microcontroller, which is so part of Azure. Azure Sphere OS is just one part of the thing. Azure Services is second part, and the most important part is the Azure microcontroller. So you need to have that device with that microcontroller, then only you can play with it.
Right. And I'm assuming that the kernel sources are available for this, right?
Yes, that's what I was more interested in. So when I talked to him, and I was like, okay, it's a Linux kernel. So what are you doing? So we were like, it's not a distribution, just the way Canonical or Red Hat, they all take the mainline kernel, they customize it, they tweak it, and for their needs. That's the same thing we will be doing it, but it will be upstream. So we will push all the changes back to the upstream. It depends on Linus whether he accepts the changes or not. But that will be the main thing. The most interesting and funny thing that I found is that the Linux kernel is licensed on GNU GPL version 2. So for the first time, kind of Microsoft is going to release software which runs on GNU GPL version 2. Yeah. Another important thing is that Microsoft does use Linux on Azure. They have a networking switch, but Microsoft have never sold any device or any product which has Linux kernel in it.
Yeah, so this is the first real distribution of GPL code, isn't it?
Yeah, so I asked him also that, is it safe to call that Microsoft is now a Linux player? So he started laughing. He said, we have been doing Linux for a while, but yes, you can say that. And I was actually happy because as an IoT, somebody who monitors IoT very closely, I talked to a lot of people, and security is a big problem. Even when I was at the Open IoT Summit, I talked to civil infrastructure project, which is like in Siemens and Fujitsu. They are doing massive deployments in Japan and all those Asian countries, where all the street lights and everything, they have these microcontrollers, and they are powered by Linux. But security is a big challenge for them, and they all agreed that there is no incentive for hardware vendors to invest any money in security. And the security is a very big. It's a process.
Oh, yeah.
You cannot just.
My favorite saying is the S in IoT stands for security.
Yeah,
it really kind of sums it up, doesn't it?
Yeah, there's none. Yeah. So that was interesting. And a funny thing is that I met Richard M. Stallman at the last day of the Cloud Foundry Summit last week, and I asked him. So I'll be actually posting that video, and so I had to tell him what was going on. So, and he was also kind of happy and appreciative of it. When I told him that, they also said, they will be releasing the code. But he also went to his own point that the reason why they are going to release the code is because of GNU GPL, kind of demands or requires it.
Yeah.
If it was Apache license, you will never see that code. But sadly, most corporate vendors, they choose a more permissive license instead of GNU GPL, so that they have the flexibility and they don't have to worry about any violations. So it's a double-edged sword, that while it does allow you to get the code back, at the same time it also kind of discourages a lot of people because they do want some flexibility there. So that was Microsoft. So what are your thoughts about this whole announcement?
So I think Microsoft's making a big commitment here. I'll be interested to see if they can keep it. I know when I was at Canonical and we were pushing Ubuntu Core, a lot of device manufacturers, they really didn't like the idea of updates happening to their device without them having approved that update. So I'll be curious to see what kind of traction Microsoft gets with that model. I think it would be great if somebody was responsible for security and pushing those updates. 10 years is a long time to support, and if they get a lot of buy-in, that's going to be a lot of devices they got to support too. So there's a big chance for a lot of breakages for devices from a Microsoft update, and then they're going to be on the hook for that because that's what they're saying they're going to do. So we'll see what happens.
The good thing is that, the good thing is, as I said, this is they have security from the hardware level, so they are not somebody just sitting on top of that, and there is a middleman. Microsoft is the middleman. Microsoft is the owner of the hardware, and Microsoft is the owner of the services which is updating it. And whoever works in the cloud space, they all know that Amazon Web Services and Azure, they are the two big players. Google Computing
and Amazon's got something like this too. They've got their Greengrass project, which is again extending their cloud services onto devices.
Right. So Microsoft is already doing a lot of work I don't even know how many Linux virtual. It's more than 50% for sure, because when I talked to Microsoft last time, Julia Legend from Microsoft, she told me that more than 50% Azure machines run on Linux. So it should be 60% now. They may not disclose the numbers right now, maybe at the end of the year. So it's already there.
Yeah. What I am looking forward to, though, is the enablement of these microcontrollers on the Linux kernel and having those kernel sources available. Because I expect it's not going to be long before we start seeing like a Debian that'll run on these.
Can you really run Debian on a microcontroller?
If you got the kernel, I don't see why not.
I mean, because those microcontrollers have only like how much? 4 MB, 10 MB?
Yeah, I mean, compiling all the other stuff for it might be a problem, but having the kernel there is going to be the first step in that direction.
Right. But if you compare microcontrollers with the microprocessors like ARM, all those tiny chips, microcontroller just it's like really tiny, just takes up signals, comes in and sending out data coming in. So it can't do that much either way.
Yeah,
So
but I
even
mean,
if you
it's open source, people. Somebody's going to port it. You know it's going to happen.
yes, it is going to happen.
There
for
may
sure,
not be
yeah.
a real good use case for it, but I'm still looking forward to
Yeah.
seeing it happen.
Right, right. While you are talking about, we are talking microcontroller and all those things. What's interesting is that during OpenIoT Summit, I also met Massimo Benzi. I don't know how to pronounce his name. He's the co-founder of Arduino project. That was an interesting meeting because Arduino is also building an Arduino cloud to enable all these players so that they can run all those things in the cloud and
Really?
build
I've
the
not
same.
heard of this.
Yes, and it initially they are actually running on AWS, but they are offering it for free right now. So you can build all those applications using your microcontrollers and run it on their cloud. It's amazing. So it's something similar, where they will be and then later on they will be offering a paid service if you are a, let's say, company and you want to have your private repository of code and stuff. So a lot of work is going on, but I think it's the hype has kind of ended. There is not much public interest there, so everything else is moving in either the industrial space or enterprise use cases.
Yeah, which is kind of a shame. I was really excited. I thought we were going to see this kind of renaissance of homemade devices coming out of this. And it kind of seems to have faltered a little bit. I even checked web stats. I checked like Google search requests, and it seems that the interest has kind of plateaued over the last year. Like it was showing steady growth, and then it just kind of leveled out. So I don't know, maybe we've reached some kind of bottleneck or limit, something holding back the progress of that. I don't know what it is. 3D printers, they seem to get better for the past 5 years or so, but have there been any new big developments in 3D printing technology for tabletop home use? I know you're a big 3D printer, so you probably stay more on top of this than I do.
Right. Yeah, it's a lot is happening. I use Prusa, which is like sitting there, and you can see my source also behind printer Prusa. So as a 3D printer user, the biggest challenge is, there are many. Number one is bed labeling is the big challenge. It's like, XYZ. So if the bed is not labeled, your print will not stick, and when it runs. Second challenge is it takes long to print. But if you make it fast, then when you read the edge, your printer is coming too fast. It won't miss the edge, but your edge will not be sharp. You understand momentum. Third is what happens in case of failure, where there is power failure, and now your printer is not saving any state, so you have to throw the print away and start from the beginning. So I actually use a UPS with my printer, just for the printer.
That's smart.
Fourth is what happens, let's say the filament it got blocked, or you ran out of filament, or there is some other mistake where it hit a part. So with the Prusa one that I use, they have been making massive progress. And another thing is the bed. When you put something on that, you usually use a glue so that the object doesn't stick on the bed.
Yeah, I've got a tape that I use.
Yeah, so it depends on what material, because different material like PLA or ABS or PETG, they have different kind of. So sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. So they have made a lot of improvements. One is that they have made the plate magnetic, and they are using a powder based, which is the similar material that you use on a tape, blue tape, so that the print sticks very well without using any glue. And then it's magnetic plate, so you take the whole plate out and bend the plate and take the print out, because removing the print from the plate is a big challenge.
Yeah.
And they have came out with a lot of things like, if the power failure happens, they have a built-in capacitor which stores the state of the printer, so when the power comes back, it starts from there.
Oh,
Second
cool.
is that, and if you just push, if it's printing, if you just push the nozzle, just the way you see a lot of robots, people kick the robot. So simply if you push the nozzle, it will go back and start where it left.
And is this hardware specific, or is this a software that anybody could use?
Yes, it's both, because it's fully open source, both software and hardware. It's based on Arduino board, but they are using Rambo boards. So they have made a lot of tweaks for the stepper motors, so that those positions are recorded, And another thing is that even if you run out of filament, the print, because it has a built-in laser which you actually use in the mouse itself. So when it runs out of filament, when the filament stops, so once again it stores the position. So when you replace the filament, it will start from there. So for me, because I have to take so many precautions when I'm printing something as huge as this, which takes 3 days, that printer is awesome. So a lot of things are happening in that space, but once again, nothing in the Lulzbot at all, or I don't even know, MakerBot or whatever. No, they are not doing any innovation.
I've got most of the innovation Pro variety.
Yeah, so a lot of exciting things are happening there.
Okay, man, being able to just restart a print that's gone bad halfway through, that would be a big thing. I don't like leaving mine unattended because it is kind of hot. So like if I've got plans to go out somewhere, I can't start a print and let it go while I'm gone. But if I could, hit pause, go out to dinner, come back, hit unpause, and it picks right back up, that would make things so much easier.
It's not just, I mean, I have the same. Initially what I did, I used a Raspberry Pi camera on it. So, one more thing they did with the latest one is that it has built-in Raspberry Pi Zero. So you can very easily integrate it, so you can control it with the web interface. You don't have to connect the... I forgot to tell there, one interesting thing of this feature is that you can also do multicolor printing. Because what you do is, like when you want to change the color, you just cut the filament. So as soon as the filament is finished, it will stop. You push the new filament and change the color, because I do a lot of multicolor printing here. So Joseph, he calls it poor man's multi-material printer. He also sells a multi-material printer where you can have 4 different colors, and you can just choose, and it will print layer by layer in different colors.
Yeah, that's nice, but those are a lot more expensive than just the bare basic 3D.
No, same. It's same. $800. That's it.
Well, mine was $300, so that's a pretty good difference from mine. Then again, mine was like an Amazon special. It was kind of a spur of the moment. We'd been talking about getting a printer for almost a year, and then it came on sale on Amazon. So we're like, okay, we'll just buy that now. And it was
so how happy have you been with your printer so far?
I've been pretty happy. I've had a few issues, some stuff that I've had to figure out. The hardest thing is having to re-level the bed kind of on a regular basis, because if it doesn't get that first layer just right on the bed, then it's going to mess everything else up. I also had an issue where the temperature sensor came loose, and so it was not reading the nozzle temperature right, and it got way too hot and started just like burning the plastic as it was coming out. But the sensor wires didn't come all the way out, so it took me a while to figure out what the problem was. One of the nice things, though, because I did have to assemble this myself from almost individual parts, is that I really understand how it all goes together, and I can take it apart and put it back together again. So it's as much of a big task that was to get started. I think it's really going to pay off in the long run, having to have done that in the first place.
Right. So you have to do the bed labeling manually every time?
Yeah, there's 4 little screws on each corner, and it just gets...
Yes, I forgot to tell you, this is a beauty because it has a built-in sensor, Pinda probe. So every time, first of all, if you build it yourself, if you buy the whole printer, then they have already calibrated the bed. If you build it yourself, then you have to run the calibration, but the calibration only requires you to push that button on, put a paper on so that you can control the probe a bit, and once it's calibrated, it's done. So every time the printer runs, it calibrates. So what it does, even if your bed is like skewed, it knows. So if you're printing like that, so it knows that the bed is a bit screwed. So it will give you the flawless print, and that was the biggest problem that one of my friend, he had a 3D printer, and he told me. But ever since I got Prusa, I was like, well, that's not even a problem.
Yeah, I would love to have that. Yeah. And it makes sense.
I think you should do that.
It's got no kind of sensor to tell when the nozzle touches anything. So the bed it's just suspended on these 4 springs with a little screw to tighten or loosen the spring. And that's it. So I have to manually move the head to one corner, adjust that spring, move it to another corner, adjust that one. And just like slide a piece of paper underneath to make sure I've got just a tiny fraction of a gap between the nozzle and the bed. So yeah,
There
that's
is no physical
frustrating. I'd love
contact.
to have something that's calibrated for me.
Yeah, there is no physical contact. It has a Pinda probe which actually it detects the iron or metal. So it never touches the bed, physically. It just detects it. There's those points, and that's it. And it's kind of magical. I love it.
Yeah, that would be nice. The biggest thing for me though is if I could either have it print faster or be able to pause prints. That would let me do a lot more with it, because the longest one I've done so far has been like 10 hours, I think. And that's a long time to wait for a print. I'm impatient.
I know.
When I was doing Java programming, I would hate to wait for things to compile.
Yeah. What I do with this one, it has an option to, because it uses the... so I also, sometime when I have to print fast and I really don't have any edges like that, so I increase all the way to 40,000 milliseconds or whatever it is, so it prints really fast. So instead of 2 hours, it prints the whole thing in like 30 minutes.
Really? And that what's the drawback to that?
No, the only thing is, like, if you're printing something which has like sharp edges on it, so because it's moving fast, so you will see that it's kind of, if you're printing N, so you'll see the edges of N are a little bit pointy, not very sharp, because the printer head is moving very fast. But if you are printing something which is like the sword, you really don't have to worry about the edges because it's raw edges. But it saves so much time. I love it. And with this new one, they have improved the speed even more, so you can print really fast with that. Yeah,
I think speed's probably going to be the biggest thing to make this.
Okay, so right now they are selling MK2S, the previous generation, which I have. They are selling it only for $600. So, but you get everything. This awesome, it's amazing. I mean, I would love to have two, but I don't have space.
Yeah, that's my problem too. I need more tables.
But if your current printer ever breaks, you should go with Prusa. They're good.
How do you spell that?
Prusa.
Okay.
Yeah, just Google it and you'll find it. It's really good. And since it's open source, that's the reason I care about it. Okay. All right. What else is going on?
I think next time I want to talk about apps and app development a little bit. But I'd also like to hear from people who watch this video what kind of things that they're doing with 3D printers or IoT devices or any kind of like physical thing that you've made. Let us know. We'll talk about it on the show. Again, if anyone's got experience doing anything with this new Azure Sphere that Microsoft came out with, if you were part of a beta program or anything like that, let us know how that went, what you think you can do with it. And then we'll be back next week. Like I said, I think we're going to talk about apps next week, Swapnil.
Right. We will be talking about app next week. And app is something that is, nobody uses operating system. Everybody uses apps. So let's talk about app next time.
All right. See you all later.
Thank you.